Over in the United Kingdom, King Charles III has appointed his youngest brother, Prince Edward, as the new Duke of Edinburgh. Their late father, Prince Philip, held that historic title from 1947 until he passed away in 2021. For over 20 years, Prince Edward was promised one of the most prestigious titles in the entire British royal family. His father personally made that big promise right before he passed away. Queen Elizabeth supported it, and Buckingham Palace publicly confirmed it on Edward's wedding day. But when the moment finally arrived, King Charles hesitated actually, considering giving that historic title to a 10-year-old girl. Instead, when he finally agreed, he added a strict condition that could end a centuries-old dukedom in just one generation. This was only the very beginning. Behind these intense title negotiations, Edward's legal team was busy securing something far more valuable, a 150-year lease on a 120-room Crown estate through a private company. This setup gives Edward the exclusive legal right to make money off royal property. Plus, Edward also has Prince Philip's charitable network, which operates across 140 countries. He has not just won a title, he has inherited an entire institution. Today, we are going to reveal how Edward outmaneuvered the king, secured his father's legacy, and claimed assets Charles believed were his. This is the dramatic inheritance battle that the royal family desperately wanted to keep hidden, a promise that took 24 years to actually keep. The story starts 2 days before the wedding, not in a majestic throne room, but in a quiet sitting room. It was June 1999, and Prince Edward was preparing to marry Sophie Rhys-Jones. Suddenly, Prince Philip walked in. Skipping the small talk, he got right to the point. Sophie later described this unusual moment to The Telegraph. He literally came straight into the room and said, "Right, I would like it very much if you would consider that." He desperately wanted Edward and Sophie to think about Edward becoming the next Duke of Edinburgh. Edward and Sophie were left totally stunned. Edward always assumed his older brother Andrew would inherit the prestigious Edinburgh title, but Philip had entirely different plans. On their wedding day, Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Edward would indeed receive the Grand Dukedom of Edinburgh in the future, once Prince Philip's title returned to the Crown. That announcement involved 3 prominent royals, a written agreement, and a direct public statement. This certainly seemed like a promise from the British monarchy. Still, nobody ever expected that in due course would mean waiting over 2 decades, 2 tragic deaths, and 1 king's stubborn refusal to keep his word. So Edward accepted the lesser title of Earl of Wessex, inspired by the film Shakespeare in Love, and quietly waited. He waited through his father's final withdrawal from public life, Philip's passing in April 2021, and the most difficult 18 months of his royal career. When Philip died, the Edinburgh title did not immediately go to Edward. Instead, British peerage law passed it to Charles as the eldest son. The plan was always for Charles to recreate the title and bestow it upon Edward, but Charles had very different plans. Charles's betrayal and the 2 years of silence. From April 2021 to March 2023, a bitter sibling rivalry played out quietly inside the royal household. To really understand this, you must know that Charles has long harboured deep resentment toward his youngest brother Edward. This bitter resentment actually dates back to their early childhood days. Biographer Jonathan Dimbleby wrote that Charles felt his father treated him very coldly, while Prince Philip was much warmer toward young Edward, often reading to him and playing with him. Author Tom Bower, who penned a biography of Charles, found it quite odd that a 72-year-old man could be jealous of a younger brother who has no public role and is completely harmless. But this jealousy surfaced in July 2021, just a few months after Philip passed away. The Times reported that Charles had definitely decided not to grant Edward the Edinburgh title. One insider stated plainly, "It is completely up to him what happens to the title. It will absolutely not go to Edward. Another source added Edinburgh will not go to the Wessexes as far as he is concerned. Clarence House then added even more confusion with an official statement saying that any mention of the title was nothing but speculation. King Charles justified this choice with his plan for a slimmed-down monarchy. A palace courtier told the Daily Mail that the king desperately wanted to simplify the royal household and believed that making Edward Duke of Edinburgh did not fit that plan, since the title would eventually pass down to Edward's son James. However, this excuse seemed totally inconsistent. Charles had no issue granting Harry the Sussex title back in 2018, or letting Andrew keep his York title after the Epstein scandal. This slimmed-down argument only seemed to apply when it came to honouring his own father's wishes. Then, in November 2022, shortly after Charles became king, a highly surprising report surfaced. Buckingham Palace was reportedly thinking about handing the Edinburgh title over to young Princess Charlotte instead of Edward. In a rare interview, Prince Edward opened up about his feelings quite honestly. It was fine in theory years ago when it was kind of a pipe dream of my father's. It really depends on whether the Prince of Wales, once he takes the throne, will do that. So we will just wait and see. His father's final dying wish was suddenly reduced to a mere pipe dream, this hollow Victoria title built to die. On March 10th, 2023, Edward turned 59. On that very day, Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles had officially handed Edward the title of Duke of Edinburgh. This move came after 2 whole years of public embarrassment for Edward and felt more like a betrayal than a thoughtful gesture. But royal insiders pointed out one massive catch. This title was given as a lifetime peerage, meaning it will not be hereditary, which is highly unusual for a major royal dukedom. When Prince Philip was granted the Edinburgh title back in 1947, it was fully hereditary. The same went for Andrew as the Duke of York, plus William and Harry, who became the Dukes of Cambridge and Sussex. Every single recent dukedom has been hereditary except for Edward's. This sharp choice carries massive consequences. Once Edward passes away, the Duke of Edinburgh title dies with him. His young son James, the current Earl of Wessex, cannot inherit it. Instead, it will revert directly to the crown, ready to be passed down to one of King Charles's or William's own children. According to royal editor Camilla Tominey of the Daily Telegraph, this special clause was designed to let Prince William award the prestigious Edinburgh title to one of his children, most likely Princess Charlotte. Through this move, Charles kept his father's promise in name, but completely stripped its meaning. Philip desperately wanted Edward's family to carry on the Edinburgh legacy, but Charles made sure it would survive for only a single generation. He handed his brother a title, but ensured it would be snatched back once Edward was gone. Royal observers quickly pointed out the massive contrast with Prince Andrew, who retained his Duke of York title despite his public disgrace. The brutal message was clear. Even a disgraced prince keeps his family's hereditary honour, but Edward, the fiercely loyal brother, gets a title that dies with him. Enter the Bagshot Park masterstroke, where Edward's lawyers completely outsmarted the Crown. While everyone was distracted by the title drama, a much bigger play was unfolding quietly behind the scenes. Royal titles are mostly ceremonial. They bring immense prestige but zero actual income. The Edinburgh title doesn't come with any valuable landholdings or generate a single penny of revenue for him. However, prime property is real power. Back in 1998, when Edward was still just the Earl of Wessex, he leased Bagshot Park directly from the Crown estate. This gorgeous 120-room historic mansion sits on 51 acres in Windsor Great Park. The original deal was modest for royalty, a 50-year lease for £5,000 a year, rising to £90,000 annually, only after Edward spent £1.36 million on a massive £3 million renovation, with the Crown estate covering the rest. The National Audit Office confirmed this. was fair market value. Then, in 2007, Edward's lawyers pulled off an absolute masterstroke. Through his private company, Eclipse Nominees Limited, Edward paid a flat fee of £5 million to extend that lease from 50 years to 150 years. In return, his annual rent dropped to a peppercorn, meaning basically nothing, usually a single pound or less per year. Now, here is why this is massive. The lease has 0 resale restrictions, except that any future buyer can afford to maintain the estate. Unlike Prince Andrew's Royal Lodge lease, which limits inheritance to Sarah Ferguson and their daughters, Edward's lucrative lease has absolutely no family restrictions. The Duchess of Edinburgh, Lady Louise, and young James can all inherit it. Crucially, Edward is allowed to sell the leasehold and pocket the profits. He holds a 150-year right to a Crown estate property worth 30 million, secured for 5 million, with virtually 0 ongoing costs. When the Times exposed this sweetheart deal in late 2025, campaigners labelled it completely obscene. Housing reform advocates noted that while everyday leaseholders struggle with sky-high ground, rents a royal 15th in line to the throne gets to live in a property that could have generated massive public income instead. The Crown Estate has refused to explain how it actually calculated this market-tested premium. However, a top property law firm says Edward's deal is legally identical to any standard long lease transaction. Prestigious, sure, but legally quite ordinary. Edward's legal team made absolute sure his grip on Bagshot Park is a rock-solid contract that even the king cannot break. Meanwhile, Prince Philip's charitable empire, the massive inheritance nobody ever talks about, is growing. Titles spark confusion and leases trigger disputes. But one part of Prince Edward's secret inheritance is actually his most massive triumph, even though the public barely notices it. Prince Philip's profound charitable legacy. When Philip passed in April 2021, his material wealth was surprisingly simple. The bulk of it passed directly to Queen Elizabeth under spousal rules. When she died in 2022, King Charles did not have to pay a single penny in inheritance taxes thanks to the royal exemption. But Philip's real legacy was never about cash. It was the incredible network of charity work he championed for over 70 long years, especially his famous Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, which Philip launched back in 1956 alongside German educator Kurt Hahn. It began as a small youth initiative but quickly exploded into one of the biggest youth development programs on Earth, running in over 140 countries, with more than 1 million teenagers finishing it annually. In 2025, over 342,000 young people began their award journeys in the United Kingdom, a massive record. Edward didn't just inherit this duty, he sweated for it, earning his own gold award in 1986 by completing a grueling 60-mile 4-day trek from Blair Athol to Tomintoul. He became a British trustee of the charity in 1988. In Tiumshuakin or 1999, he launched the International Special Projects Group to help disadvantaged kids get a shot at the award. Years later, he rose to chairman of the Board of Trustees for the International Award Foundation itself. When Charles granted the Edinburgh title in March 2023, Edward also stepped up as the official patron of both the Duke of Edinburgh's award and the International Award. His personal statement showed he knew the immense weight of the role. Being asked to follow in my father's footsteps is a profound honour and a massive responsibility. Protecting and growing what is easily his biggest global legacy means the absolute world to me. Deal to me. By late 2025, Edward further grew Philip's legacy by taking over as patron of Outward, Bound, another key group his father loved. Princess Beatrice joined him as deputy. Patron showing this wasn't just some empty royal gesture. It legally handed down an institutional power that King Charles never grabbed for himself. The Councillor of State Authority, Edward's absolute constitutional trump card. One major piece of Edward's inheritance is constantly ignored: his role as a Councillor of State. In December 2022, a new law officially added Princess Anne and Prince Edward to this elite group. These councillors can stand in for the king when he travels outside the United Kingdom or falls too ill to work. This job is incredibly massive. These deputies can attend official meetings, sign critical state documents, welcome foreign ambassadors, and pass laws, wielding the king's actual power. Edward's position lasts for life. This history shows just how critical he has become. Previous councillors included Prince Harry and Prince Andrew, but neither was actually useful. Harry fled the country and publicly trashed the royal family, while Andrew was totally radioactive from scandal. King Charles desperately needed loyal allies, and Parliament acted fast. According to the UCL Constitution Unit, this move signals a massive shift inside the royal family, focusing on active working royals rather than just their random place in the line of succession. Prince Edward, currently 15th in line, wields far more legal power than Prince Harry, who is 5th, or Andrew, who is 8th. When Charles underwent cancer therapy in early 2024, Edward, Anne and William stepped up to run the entire firm. Looking toward the future, young Prince George will step into this councillor role at 21, followed later by Charlotte and Louis. But until that day comes, Edward remains one of just 3 trustworthy royals who can actually govern for the king. This quiet revolution shows how Edward won the long game. Step back to see the whole picture and you will spot the scale of Edward's silent rise. He was once considered the laughingstock of the monarchy, the prince who infamously quit the Marines, whose private television company bled cash constantly, and who settled for the lesser title of Earl. But today he holds prestigious titles, sprawling property leadership roles, and real authority that no younger royal sibling has secured in modern history. The prestigious title of Duke of Edinburgh, even as a non-hereditary peer, makes Edward one of the most senior royals. His close family holds a massive 150-year lease on Bagshot Park, guaranteeing a secure nest for future generations. Interestingly, the estate is run by a private firm operating completely outside of direct palace control. Philip's deep charitable network gives Edward massive global relevance while running completely separate from the crown. Furthermore, the new Councillors of State Act secures him a lifelong constitutional position that can never be stripped away without direct approval from Parliament itself. By 2025, Edward's incredible work ethic was undeniable, completing 307 official engagements, the 3rd highest of royals, standing right behind Anne and William. He even represented the king on official trips to Papua New Guinea, Japan, India and Canada. He also served as the Lord High Commissioner to the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland and was granted Scotland's most prestigious royal honour, the Ancient Order of the Thistle. He also took over the outward-bound patronage, directly securing Prince Philip's legacy. Meanwhile, look at his brothers. Prince Andrew lost every single royal title, and military link got booted from Royal Lodge and now lives in a modest farmhouse on the Sandringham estate. Harry walked away from his royal duties, moved to California, and their relationship with the family completely soured, sparking constant media storms with every single interaction. Meanwhile, Charles, dealing with a serious cancer diagnosis and a monarchy in crisis, has watched his dream of a slimmed-down royal family backfire, completely creating a mess where just one major illness triggers a full constitutional emergency. Then there is Edward the Prince, who went totally unnoticed. He waited 24 years for his title. Despite his brothers stalling over their late father's final wishes, he never once complained or spoke out against the firm. Instead, he consistently showed up, got to work, and quietly secured some major power plays. King Charles may wear the crown, but when it comes to the legacy Prince Philip valued most, his name, his duties, and his cherished Edinburgh title, Edward holds it all. Unlike that fragile crown, what Edward has is secure and cannot be stripped away by any future monarch. It is fully guaranteed by law and cannot be altered. The quiet prince played the longest game inside the royal family, and he succeeded. If this story shocked you, subscribe and ring the bell. We explore the royal secrets the palace desperately prefers to keep quiet. Leave a comment below. Did Charles treat Edward fairly, or did he fail to respect their father's wishes? Like this video for more inside looks at the power struggles behind the crown.